Welcome back to the Responsible AI Summit. We're here with Helen Todd, and we're going to be discussing one of the most unique points of discussion that I don't think anybody else is going to address, at least in such great detail, and that is the future of online communication with AI avatars. You might be asking yourself, is this a video game? Is this related to, uh, the metaverse, or what is this? And Helen is going to tell us everything to do with this space in the span of the next 25 minutes. So with that, we're going to share her screen, and she's off to the races.
Thank you so much for having me, and who's ever watching now or the recording, thank you for your time. My name is Helen Todd, and we'll get started on the slides. I am the first resident of Cincinnati to digitally clone myself with a hyper-realistic avatar. But the story starts a little bit before that. Back in 2010, I founded Sociality Squared, which is one of the first dozen or so ever social media agencies. So I was very, very early on of seeing where social media was going. So social media has been a big part of my life for the past, or my career, I should say, for the past 15 years. And then fast forward to October of 2022, a friend of mine was visiting town and who happens to work at OpenAI, and gave me a demo of this dog fooding version of this thing called ChatGPT. And I always have creative projects. We put one of mine in, and it, in seconds, the output came and it captured my imagination. And then, as everyone listening knows, the following month it captured the world's imagination. And after that, I was so excited and wanted to learn everything I could and dive in for everything Gen AI that the ChatGPT moment unlocked. And you fast forward, went to South by that March, and then that April, I launched my podcast, Creativity Squared, which explores the intersection of AI and creativity. So we explore the good, the bad, and everything in between. Because one thing that's really important in this moment in time is everything's just moving so fast and accelerated, and we all feel like we have the rugs pulled out under us and like, what's going on? So I know how it can be like super overwhelming and everything. And I've been joking that I've been building the plane as I've been flying it. But I'm very interested in clones and avatars for a lot of different reasons. But this came out of a guest on my show who introduced me to virtual. Well, I learned so much from my guests, but introduced me to hyper-realistic avatars, and that got me excited, and that's how I got cloned. And I'm going to share with you today kind of the state of the industry and why cloning is really important, and why it should be on your radars. So we'll check out my slides. I mentioned that. Here's the link to my podcast or QR code, but you can find it at creativitysquared.com. There's a lot of interviews with different people who are in the there's so many words to describe this because it's so new. We go by, or we we are calling it. I like digital clones personally, but clone can be kind of loaded for some people. There are digital twins, virtual humans, digital likeness. And the point that I wanted to make about pulling the rug underneath, that everything's moving so fast, and there's, we're all trying to figure it out. And one thing that's really important to remember is that we need places like this and Joaquin to share ideas, to push back on each other, to plant seeds of what can be possible. And my podcast is really a place for the nuance, to discover and talk, because these ideas that that we have, we're planting seeds and we're growing together. So it's important to have conversations like this where we're learning from one another. So that's my intention today with you. Why I'm paying attention to avatars and why I've digitally cloned and why I think you should be paying attention. But also, we just need to be in conversation and in community as much as possible during this amount of time. I'm on LinkedIn as Helen Todd Human, so you can find me there. But as we play more in the digital and our imaginations are getting so excited and unleashed with all of the possibilities and our dreams that we can now, manifest digitally. But one important thing that I've been reminded of is to stay grounded, and what are the seeds that we're planting and the stories that we're going to tell. So that's one thing that I've been thinking a lot about of recent. And Joaquin was like, tell us more about who you are. I've also been selected to do a solo session at South by Southwest, which I'm so excited for. And it's called Farewell Information Age, Welcome to the Imagination Age. Because we are entering a whole new era. That's probably a different conversation, but Joaquin can ask. But when I say the imagination age, and this is like what I've been obsessed with of recent, of getting all the ideas out. But when we look at the Industrial Revolution, that was technology that catapulted us into that. And then we had are transitioning out of the information age and into the imagination age. And Amy Webb calls it Generation T, that we're all in this massive transition together. So we all just have to give each other grace and space as we bumble around and figure out things. But let me continue. So a few other things about me. In addition to my podcast, I also co-host the largest AI meetup it's actually all of Ohio. We meet at the UC Digital Futures building, and it's so great that we have spaces both virtually to connect like this and in person too. But one thing about Cincinnati has so much heart, and we're all excited about all these toys. And Cincinnati is like, yes, we are excited too, but we also understand the importance of responsible AI, that the barriers around our playgrounds, that we can play in the playground of possibility. We need safe spaces for us to play. And this is why Cincinnati is so important and understands the value of safe spaces and responsible AI to give us a container to play in the playground of possibility. But I can go down a lot of rabbit holes. Okay, so similarly to how the iPhone turned everyone into photographers, AI is democratizing creativity and giving us superpowers. And one of these superpowers is with AI clones. I think it's the next slide. Did you know that the digital avatar market is projected to be $270 billion by 2030? It's a massive market, and this includes like your gaming avatars, the hyper-realistic avatars. The avatars kind of cover a broad range, and the Readyverse and stuff. Right now, they're not interoperable, which hopefully will change in the future. They also include stock avatars. You have companies like Synthesia and Colossian, where if you're not good on camera, or you're too busy because you're traveling and trying to lead a company or doing talks or whatever, and you can choose pre-selected or not pre-selected, but stock avatars. Some, like from Synthesia, are totally AI created. And then you have some companies that are actually based on actual humans. And they're almost like talent agencies where people can have passive income with their avatars. And this is where I get excited, is with Gen AI unlocking new economic possibilities. But it has to be done with intention. But in general, virtual humans, whichever terminology resonates the most, is really just a natural extension of our online identities. Everyone already has avatars, whether they are anonymous. Not everyone wants to put their name, because when we play with our identities and stuff, sometimes as you're experimenting, you might not want your name tied to it. And then we have like all the other avatars that we've seen in cartoons and throughout history, where the crypto, the the Bored Apes and all of this. So this is just our natural extension of the avatars that already exist. And when we're talking about a more professional tool in our communication toolbox, you want it to look as much like you as possible. LinkedIn doesn't even allow, other types of avatars or synthetic avatars in the LinkedIn as your LinkedIn image. So this is why it's so great that we now have these digital puppets. I like to think of it as a puppet to help bring our stories alive in a very dynamic way. And another way that I like to think about it, I used to love Jib Jab. I don't know if you all remember or know of Jib Jab, but there are a couple of companies, I pulled this right before the presentation, where you just take your head and you put it on another body, and they had holiday cards that were kind of funky. But we're entering the age of, this is the professional version of Jib Jab, at least the one I have. We're entering a world where you can have any avatar that you want, a superhero or whatever. But for the purposes of this, we're talking about professional, hyper-realistic avatars of yourself. But to me, they're just the adult version of Jib Jab. And I feel like this analogy kind of makes it a little bit more approachable in that light, because I know a lot of people, when they hear of digital avatars, they immediately go to deep fakes, which we'll cover. So the differences in our tech stack, the Helen, I go by she, her are my pronouns, and my clone goes by Helen 2.odd. And you can name your clone, you can't, but I chose 2.odd as a play off of my name. There's never going to be a better one than the original, but also she's a little odd, with the uncanny valley aspect. But one thing to say about that, right now you can really detect when the uncanny valley in your gut can tell you, like, that looks really human, but it looks a little off. But that's quickly going to change because AI is just getting so good. So to be able to discern, you're looking at the real Helen, that's a joke I get all the time. What was I saying? Oh, and this is why the initiatives like the Content Authenticity Initiative is so important, that people can self-select to say this was generated by AI. Because I know personally, I always want to know if I'm talking to a human or to a person, or who I'm talking to. If I'm texting my brother and my sister-in-law happens to have his phone and texting back, like, it would be nice if it was like, hey, this is Allie texting on Chris's phone, so that type of thing. So you just know where you're at, and especially when there's a lot of fear and we're not sure what is real or what's not. I always advise people to be very upfront that this is created with AI, this is why I have it, and that kind of eases people's fear in this big moment of transition. So one of the superpowers is I only speak one language, which is English. My clone speaks 28 languages. So as the clone technology improves, I'll also be able, or my clone will also be able to speak more languages, which is very exciting. I'm somewhat camera ready today. My clone is always camera ready and always bubbly and always ready to accept a script and create it. Video production time takes hours, even if you're flipping on the phone. I mean, this is probably the easiest way, to go live. But aside from that, unless you're just clicking this, video always takes time. So, but the avatars streamline the video production where you can go from hours to minutes. So that's one of the other superpowers of just being able to create a lot of video quickly and at scale. And the production costs are time or money. And all the different platforms have different starting price points, but they're all competitive. And most of them are introducing a free trial so that you can test, like HeyGen is a great one, in addition to Synthesia and Colossian, which I mentioned. And we were both ethically made. And this is the point that I want to talk to you about, why it's important, responsible AI, when it comes to these avatars too. Because responsible AI, in my mind, is are, at least from the creative sense, there's other frameworks that you've all been discussing. We want consent, compensation, control, and credit and transparency in all of our, AI in general. The thing with deep fakes, they're similar technology than the clone providers that I'm speaking to. It's a little bit like same, but different, where deep fakes take someone else's body, typically another human body, and then just does like a facelift, like that Face Off movie where you take the face and put it on another body, like this one right here. And you've seen these. We had the Taylor Swift issue. All of this stuff hits the headlines a lot. Deep fakes are done without consent. They're done with the intent to deceive. They're predominantly harmful. And just in general, I would not watch any AI porn. I think in the future, when we put safe boundaries, we can have fun with that. But just assume right now, because we don't have the guardrails that we need, that any AI porn is done without consent, just in the current playground that we're playing in. But the actual way that I was scanned was very different. But deepfakes are really important, and we're starting to prevalent, and we're starting to see some rules and regulations address them. But as probably everyone knows, in this conference, there's certainly not enough to really meet the moment in this specific moment in time. And I get this question a lot because I speak a lot about clones and AI and creativity and my imagination age. And I get the question like, aren't you really worried that putting yourself out there with a clone is actually putting you at more risk? And I'm hyper aware as a woman that has a little following on the internet, that puts me at risk for online harms, just because that's the state of the internet right now. And in some ways, not in some ways, everyone who has a presence right now online is at risk for deep fakes, because the technology is getting so good. You could take a still image and animate it. You might have seen it was My Heritage a couple years back. We're taking old photos and bringing them back to life. They're just getting better. But one of my takes is I'm not worried in general about my identity being out there. I'm already kind of crossed that bridge of being public on the internet and social media and whatnot. But for the people who aren't, it's actually kind of like a protective layer between me and actual video footage. So if you cloned actual video footage of me, Helen, that's a higher fidelity than doing a copy of a clone. So in some ways, whether it's for the people who are worried, like, I don't want to put myself out there, the hyper realistic clones actually have a little bit of a barrier, because as the slide says, like, copy of a copy loses fidelity. But you have more like fantastical fantasy like avatars or different ones. One gal on my show who's an artist and wants to keep her anonymity did our entire interview live with her avatar, but it was one of those face mask ones. So when she was like looking up and answering, the avatar was responding, and she actually wants to keep her identity protected. And there's a place for that too. So even, she's you can't really clone her or whatever. I guess you could like screenshot and stuff, but the avatars in some ways can be a barrier from our actual photos and our real videos. But I wouldn't say that this is like the actual benefit, but this is how I'm not worried about it, because you lose fidelity. A copy of a copy loses fidelity. But some avatar use cases, I'm not going to play this now because I don't think the internet, I don't think it's set up. Well, maybe let's try. So I love Snoop Dogg. I hope everyone enjoyed watching him during the Olympics. But one of the first use cases, and this comes from Synthesia, is that this on the left, they did this whole commercial. It's a brand in Australia, if there's anyone from Australia, that's this Just Eat version. And they loved it. The brand loved it. Did this whole big production and whole big shoot. And then they're like, we love it and we want to use it for the same company that just goes from under a different brand name in a different market, menu log. And so instead of reshooting this big production and all the costs, what they did was digitally clone Snoop Dogg, and then just dub over some of his lyrics every time statements. Every time he would say "just eat," they just dubbed it over with the clone with menu log, and you really cannot tell the difference. So you'll have to trust me on this. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to skip this, but you can look it up afterwards if you'd like. Okay, we're going to go. And then we also have clone avatars. They're actually getting way more expressive and being able to take the scripts and be more expressive. So that's only going to increase as well. And I mentioned the uncanny valley. I've already kind of made the main point with this, but with this robot, this is the first robot that's making art. But again, like what I mentioned, right now we're at the stage with AI where we have this uncanny valley, and that internal gut can help guide us of like, is this real or not real? But that's going to change. And again, why I think it's so important to reinforce and just set expectations where people know like this is my clone or this isn't my clone, because as the technology gets better, it's going to be harder and harder to tell the difference. But the way that I like to think about online clones is just another tool in your communication toolbox. And when we think about building trust with our audience, however that might be, the best way, of course, I think, is always in person, where you're getting to see people's face and their response to you. And, there's an energy exchange for where ideas come to person come out. So face-to-face is always, in my mind, the gold standard. And then below that is video. So it's not or I would say, video. So video. So like synchronous calls or asynchronous, if you're sending, or synchronous, where Zoom, where we're seeing each other in real time. Below that is a video of a human. And I like to think like sometimes for my birthday, my niece my brother will record my niece and nephew saying like, happy birthday. So that message is delivered in video from real humans and really thoughtful. And I think below that is actually, when we're building trust, the clone video. It's as close to me as it looks. It sounds like me, it looks like me. It's my digital presence and my physical and my voice that's been cloned and recreated. And the way that they're created is through scripts. Right now, some of them are more dynamic, but those haven't hit the market at a very affordable price yet. But it sounds like me, it looks like me, and it's my words that I've put in it, and then create video. So it looks like me, it sounds like me, and it's my words, and I'm sending it for a purpose, to bring, instead of a still image of just me, it's more dynamic. And then below that is audio, image, and text. So depending on where you're at with your client communication or client journey, and mapping the communication to the different points of your customer journey, you can insert, like if you're really good on camera and you have a lot of time, like that's great, do that. If you are working with a CEO that doesn't have time to be on camera, it's so much easier to do one scan and get the clone, and then that CEO can go off and be the face of the company and hand over the clone with special permissions and this correct structure for a marketing team or PR team or whatever team to help manage that clone on behalf of the CEO or client or whatnot. So it helps free up time. And one of the guests on my show is Dustin Toole, who I met at the Marketing AI conference in Cleveland. Another use case of that, there was I'm not going to remember the boxer's name right this second, but there was a boxer and the ad agency needed a video, and they only had like 6 weeks, and the boxer was like in training, so he didn't have, like, you don't want to, that's like sacred time for boxers training and whatnot. So instead of pulling the boxer out of the training, which is out of his zone or her zone, in this case it was a he, out of training, in the clone, they were able to use footage that they already had, clone the boxer, and using AI and traditional techniques, bang out a commercial in 6 weeks, which is a massive like savings. The client was happy. It happened quick on a tight deadline, and you were able to use the sport athlete or celebrity without bugging them. So that's like some of the use cases of like, this actually frees up time and allows us to do our job without bottlenecking in some cases, depending on what the use case is. Some other use cases, my avatar makes a lot of appearance at events. It's really great to take long form and convert long form into video for SEO purposes. Right now, content on your websites are really important for all of the answer engines and optimization for those as we're moving from search, but that's another panel. And then we have social media and email. And another really great use case, we've already seen like on all these websites, the little icon at the bottom that has the chat bot box, they're starting to turn into AI bots, the custom AI GPTs or custom bots. And some of them have like little photos, some of them have like, I've seen a few videos, but soon you're going to start seeing avatars there because it's not just a company, it's like the people in the face of the company who's actually behind the screens that it makes it more powerful. It like personalizes the digital to a certain extent. So anyone with online courses, a professor that might have there's so many thought leaders that might have all this great content for their classes or for online, but maybe they're not good on camera, or I know I get stressed out thinking about online courses and how much work they are. But if you have the scripts, it's really easy to make the avatars. And one trend that I'm also seeing is in the same way, as easy as it is to drop an image into like a blog post, I'm already starting to see integrations of like, pick your avatar or take the script that you just wrote on this LMS learning platform. And the text that you did for course one, we're just going to turn that into the script and have a video. So just the creation of anything that needs video in a face like this makes it a whole lot easier in that regard. And are they effective? And the answer is yes. This is Jill Scheifelbein. She's been on my show, and she finished her doctorate last Christmas, I believe, last December, so about a year. And she did one of the first initial studies, and she works at one of the clone companies on just studying them. If a clone stands in quotes, for their human counterpart, are they effective? And her research showed that they are. And how she conducted it is, one, she had the real Jill, she had one with the avatar, and then she had one, I forget the whole story, but like she showed one where she revealed that it was an avatar and one where she didn't reveal it was an avatar. So she tested a bunch of, or didn't disclose that it was an avatar. And so she tested all of them. And anyway, what it found out was that the avatar, the learning was effective. The people who watched the avatar did retain content for a passing grade, and that it was more powerful to reveal that it was an avatar. And there is a little bit of a gimmicky thing now, but as long as people know it's an avatar, like I'm here for the content and the course, and in some cases, I know like it's Clippy that's helping on Microsoft, or maybe a little, I don't know, turtle walking us through something. So this is just making it more vibrant with human faces that are dynamic, of people that tied to the content that you're publishing. And then how are clones made? So I have a studio clone. The technology from when I got my clone delivered, my first one, last July. So it's been a hot minute. But the thing is, like all of the studio with a green screen, the technology is getting so good. You can really get high fidelity clone video with just using your phone, which is pretty wild, the fidelity that you're getting. So the cost and the access to clones are all going down. The studio ones, you want green screen and 4K. And then this one, I'd made with Render, who sponsored this version of Helen 2.0. You record the voice, and then they take the video footage and the voice, which is powered, this version, Synthesia and 11 Labs, and then using the magic of AI comes. So I did the video, and then that content was approved. And right now, what you shoot, you get. So there's not like adding filters, and some of them are releasing like clothes and stuff and changing that, but for the most part, you can't like go in and then change your look so much. And then of course, then it got delivered. But this process took from when I shot like 3 weeks or so. But now you can literally, with just a couple minutes of footage, going to HeyGen, Colossian, or Synthesia, use your phone. 4K camera is better, of course, or depending on your phone and your camera, but be able to shoot with just a couple minutes of footage, like 3 minutes or less, and get this too at almost the same fidelity as the studio. So that's pretty exciting as far as just the quality of the clones that are coming out. We'll skip that slide. I mentioned that already. So what's next? So one of the trends that I see is like all of just the different spaces related to video content is just, they're all merging together. Like, I think one thing when I think about the democratization of creativity specific to clones, like we are now getting, typically you'd have to be like a Hollywood actor and a studio in LA and have this big expensive scan to be in the video games, like Keanu Reeves for The Matrix, or Scan for the CGI and the special effects. But as a tool in the toolbox with Gen AI, it's kind of like the CGI and the special effects and the Gen AI and the clones, they're all kind of merging. The video, like whether it's the Snoop Dogg second one or the boxer one I said, it's not just like one tool in the toolbox that's creating these. It's using AI and it's using these, and they're all kind of merging together into this space for everything else down here too, on there. And then where we're also going is avatars. One thing that I get excited about is plus personal language models, or our custom language models built on our own corpus of work. So we're already building the custom GPTs and stuff. These will just add a more dynamic layer of not only like getting to pick my brain, but actually get to see my face and interact. These right now are on the more high end, and I like to think about clones as cars. Like there's different levels of cars. This Deepak Chopra one, I don't know how much it costs, but this one's a much more expensive, and it even looks a little bit gamey to me in the aesthetic, but that's going to be coming and more prevalent as well. And who's ready to be cloned after that? Here's some of them. Let's see. And if you want to get started, Render is one of my partners. Actually, I work with all of them, to be honest. I know everyone. I know all of them. But Render is great for studio and online learning. But the HeyGen and Synthesia and Colossian, if you want to just get around and play, I think all three of those have free trials just to test it out. And then Hour One is the company that I mentioned that has the virtual humans that act more as passive income and a talent agency for the humans that participate. And I think that is where I will stop for now and let Joaquin step back in and ask me some questions as well. And I'm going to close my slides.
All the questions I had were very elegantly answered throughout the unraveling of that presentation. And I really enjoy the way that you explained everything nice and tight. We do have a comment from Christian.
Okay.
Just saying this is awesome. Before we were talking about decolonizing AI and, being able to create a digital representation and shape the conversations and the way that you want to engage with the web, as long as you have control and consent and transparency, as you were saying with the 4 or 5 C's. I couldn't keep up with all the C's. That is the way to go in this new digital era where, there's the responsible, ethical way of using this technology for good and for personal development. And yes, bringing the ethical parts of this was perfectly stated.
Well, and one thing I want to talk about, the importance, and it's so funny, like I've had my podcast for 1.5 years, and I learned so much from all of my guests. And I'm working on this imagination age of like the contrast of like, what have we learned that's so great about the information age? What are the lessons that we want to carry with us? But also, where did we mess up? We kind of missed a few of the key memos of the information age. And one of those is the boundaries, because this is the thing that's kind of, that I was saying, it's like taking me a year and a half to finally like some of the stuff to click in and the implications. But this is one thing of why clones and identity and safety really go together so much, because our clones represent us and our identities are our most precious things. And we need safe spaces to play with our identity. This is why when we have kids, they have a playground, but we put them in safe containers of, here's a playground, go in and play, have fun. But there's, the guardrails or the parents or whatever. So if you want to play with dragons or trolls or whatever it is, you have that space. Maybe you like the trolls, maybe you like dragons more. But we are entering an age where our identities are reflected in all of our social footprint, but they're not safe places with the safe guardrails.
Right.
And now we're entering, a space where we want our identities to represent us. But that's why, deep fakes, if we don't have the right guardrails, people with these new toys that are so excited about their new toys, but they don't realize in some cases the harm that comes from them. So that's why, if we want to play, like, do you want to be a mermaid or a turtle or play in Star Wars or whatever it is, whatever that is, it's got to be a safe space. And this is why we see the differences in the avatars, where the ones, how I see it, are online that are anonymous. They're scared, or they're playing, or they're worried that their thought is going to get pushed back and they want to put it out in the world, but they don't want to put their name to it. And then you can kind of go along of like, if it's a cartoon or a meaningful symbol, or your actual face. So I think we just have to protect our spaces, because this is where we come out and play. And the more guardrails that we have, the actual more fun we can have, because we know that we can play in a safe space and not worry about getting deep faked or whatever. So that was one point I wanted to make sure to include today.
Helen, thank you very much for this presentation. I think those two examples are something that shakes a lot of people to the core. The social engineering, hijacking of somebody's identity to take advantage of their connections, their people, asking for money, saying they're in need of help. That's a very scary idea. And then the sexualization or object, turning people into objects for personal devious pleasure through AI porn is another loaded topic. And I'm sure we can unpack and undress this through various different angles. But we're going to save some for tomorrow for our panel discussion around how this impacts personal and macro level economy. So thank you again, Helen. And we're going to take a brief break while we're going to get ready for the panel discussion, the last event session of the day. And yeah, we'll see you all soon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Helen.